Today's episode's brought to you by History Actually Being Made.
It's high noon.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Noon Podcast, the competitive Overwatch podcast. I'm your host, The Blevins. With me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy? He's certainly not unmuted, so I guess we'll just continue on and go from there.
It's a good plan. I'm great.
Yeah, not good enough to be unmuted though. But
no. Gotta keep my good mood to myself.
It's true. In a good mood, despite We'll talk about a reason why you might not want to be in a good mood later on in the episode. But first, do a little bit of housekeeping. Talk about what's going on in the HNP world. Around the Payload, we had a new episode last week. Really good one. All I'll say is history was made. And there may or may not have been a tear shed. But in all honesty, it was... what I would call a spicy episode. We had some. There's a little bit of a rivalry going on. There were some people, going at it. It had a different feel than a lot of the other episodes. It was really good. So definitely check that one out.
So the tweets tell me there was something about crabs.
Yeah, man, it just got in a weird place. The pre-show started out weird. The beginning of the show was weird. There was some bickering back and forth. It was a good one, is what I'll say for that. And history was made. Blackwatch Report, of course, keeping it going as always for your Tier 2 and non-Overwatch League competitive. Little Blackwatch Report announcement we have here, courtesy of Thorn Rain. On the 14th of May in 2019, they're going to be having Booposaurus and Ham Tornado back on Blackwatch Report to recap this Contenders season. So a little special guest crossover episode with Boop and Ham from Contenders. So definitely check that one out on the 14th. And also just make sure you're checking out Blackwatch Report, because you know what? If you care about Contenders at all, you're not going to hear it on the show because we just don't do it. That's why we've got Blackwatch Report there, the source for Contenders and Tier 2 Overwatch for sure. Foul Play, of course, we had a nice little episode last week, but we are going to be taking this week off as the stage is over. There's no games to be played this week because it's playoffs. Playoffs? I got the sound. I don't even need to make it. Where is it? It's here somewhere. There it is. But next week we're going to be coming back and we'll do a little bit of a recap like we usually do, and we'll have another fake draft. I know a lot of you guys liked the little fake draft we did last break. We're going to be bringing that back. We'll be drafting something else. Death, do we have a definitive topic yet?
We don't have a definitive topic yet, so if you do have any draft ideas, things that are nonsensical, and also they got to be generic, right? Because you got to remember too, our hosts are East Coast, not West Coast, and there's two Northern hosts, a Southern host, so things can't be overly regional. But if you have any ideas about what we could draft, please do submit them. We have a list. We haven't decided on one for this episode, but I don't need to know what it is to know I'm going to win. You're going to try to cheat again, and it's going to be a whole lot.
Yeah, it'll probably be like best movie of all time if we don't get a better idea. So just keep that in mind. If
I
you
like
have some
food drafts.
I'll do food. I'll do food too. I'm a big.
Let's take it to an arena I can win.
Big ol' head. We're gonna get deleted from the internet. But yeah, it'll probably be best something with food if we don't hear something else. Maybe best fast food restaurant. Oh man, if
fast food menu items is the one on my head right now. That's the kind of idea we're looking for here. Menu
that's
or like
universal.
restaurants there's not enough options to choose from to go 4 or 5 rounds deep.
There's a lot of restaurants.
There's a lot, but I mean,
that's also can be kind of regional, so we want to keep it.
Right. Yeah,
we want to keep it open as much as possible. But so let us know what you want from that. So that'll be Foul Play next week. This week, we have nothing for news. Ain't no news about it.
I mean, the news is coming directly as a result of the play on the stage, so we'll be talking about it in the storylines here in a little bit. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no roster moves, no roster shakeups. An ambiguous irons in the fire style tweet from the Florida Mayhem's assistant GM Bare Hands, who's a big friend of the show. Though I can't take those tweets seriously anymore. I've been burned once before.
Burned by ironically not by the irons in the fire though. Just burned.
We have one vote in the chat for redoing the best video game franchises of all time.
I mean, I'll definitely do it again.
That's all Ice Ham wants to hear.
Yeah,
you need to do it again. I just need a different draft order, and I think I'd be okay.
You know what I'm going to first pick again? It's going to be Pokemon. It's going to be Pokemon. I'm definitely first picking Pokemon this time, especially since this Thursday I'm seeing. I will come. You know what? I'll come in next week, and I'll give you a full review of Detective Pikachu because I'm seeing it on Thursday. I already bought the tickets. I'm already pumped and ready to go see it. So
pass.
I'll give everyone a review. If you guys tweet at me and use the hashtag Blevtective Pikachu, and if I get even 3 tweets with that, I'll do a whole video review of the movie. I know it's not gonna happen. That's why I'm saying it's such a conservative number. Mostly because no one's gonna be able to spell Blevtective Pikachu because I can't even think of how you would spell that. But if you want to cast your vote, use the hashtag Blevtective Pikachu and tag me in the tweet. If I get 3, I'll do a video review of the movie after I see it on Thursday. But enough nonsense, man. We are already. This is feeling like retro high noon podcast already with all the tangents we're going on here. Let's move on here to. Oh, come on. That wasn't even the right sound. What is going on?
Can I get somebody in chat to start clipping all the times he screws up drops? And then we'll just have like a montage video of Blevins not doing drops correctly.
Every time. I press the button and then it doesn't come up and then it's not good.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing tournament talk if it weren't for that butchered drop there. I blame Stream Deck, even though Stream Deck is great. Let's talk about the matches from last week leading up into this playoff week coming up. On Thursday, we had short Thursday actually. Dallas Fuel winning 3-1 over the Florida Mayhem, which secured their playoff seat for this stage. We also had the San Francisco Shock continuing their perfect stage here, 4-0 versus the Philadelphia Fusion. On Friday, we saw Houston Outlaws cannot buy themselves a win as they lose 3-2 versus the Guangzhou Charge. Boston Uprising wins 3-1 over LA Gladiators. Vancouver Titans, much to my chagrin, wins the Battle for Canada 3-1 over the Toronto Defiant, though notably Toronto didn't look too bad, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Shanghai Dragons wins 3-1 versus Washington Justice, rounding out Friday. On Saturday, we saw the London Spitfire get their very first win ever against the Houston Outlaws in 4-0 fashion. Atlanta Reign gets the upset second win versus NYXL as their. No, I don't remember what their season was, or their stage 4 of season 1. If they got 2 losses that stage, they might have. But the first time in quite some time, or very few times, that NYXL has lost twice. They lose 3-2 versus the Atlanta Reign. Vancouver Titans continues their destruction over the league with a 4-0 versus Seoul Dynasty. Los Angeles Valiant wins 3-2 versus the Chengdu Hunters. And on Sunday, Toronto Defiant winning 4-0 versus Paris Eternal. Washington Justice completing the reverse sweep versus Boston Uprising 3-2. San Francisco Shock actually makes history, and I'm not even saying this ironically. They literally do make actual worth talking about history with the first perfect stage in Overwatch League, winning 4-0 versus the Shanghai Dragons, and Hangzhou Spark round out the week 3-1 versus the Seoul Dynasty. Whew. That was a banger of a week.
I know I choked on hearing the news about the San Francisco Shock there. Even I do want to stop right choke. There, real fast. Oh no, it's one of the storylines. We'll wait. We'll get into it when it comes time for it.
Okay. Well, let's just get this out of the way, and let's just play this for NYXL this week. Shame belling them as they lose after I predicted 2 5-0 victories. They end up losing 3-2 both times to the Atlanta Reign. Man, the best way to summarize it was a tweet by, I believe it was Dogman, if I recall correctly, which I might not be, but it was a tweet from someone for the Atlanta Reign saying, "We figured out that the best way to beat the most consistent team in the Overwatch League was to be the least consistent team in the Overwatch League, as has been evidenced by this stage and pretty much all of their play." I mean, on paper, they should not be winning this, but this is, we've talked about this as maybe something that another team that we'll be talking about right after this should do is, if you go into a match and you know what, you're not going to be able to beat a team head-to-head, maybe try something else, be a little unpredictable. I've said it for literally years now. Play a little loosey-goosey. You come in, you get the upset over these teams. You get some wins. You get something on the board here. That seems to be what Atlanta Reign has done. I mean, not to discredit their performance whatsoever. I'm sure they did the homework, and obviously they executed well. But, man, that was it was a crazy one. Any thoughts on that match, Death?
Yeah, just go ahead and reply to that tweet with like an @flame for me if you wouldn't mind. That would be great. But listen, this is not something we've not seen before in Overwatch League, right? Like, Blevins, who was the better team last year, London or Houston?
London.
That would be the season 1 champions, the London Spitfire.
Yeah.
The team that literally won the whole season, but yet they were 0-4 against the Houston Outlaws over the course of the year. A lot of these teams, and these two in particular, Atlanta and New York, that is, are very stylistic in their way of playing. Okay, New York is very defensive. They're very reactive. You come to us, and then we'll beat you when you get here, kind of a thing. And Atlanta's not that way, right? They're throwing their pieces at you. They're doing what they need to do to get the advantage. They'll be aggressive. They'll go as crazy as they need to and as aggressive as they need to get things done. And sometimes that style of play, the difference, it just doesn't mesh well, right? I'm not going to sit here and say Atlanta's the better team. After this, I certainly will, but that's just me trolling Blevins. That's not really me meaning it. You're getting my real opinion now. New York is still clearly the better team between these two, but Atlanta just plays well against New York. Their style works for them. It lines up. They've gotten really good play. They get up for the moment, Atlanta does. They've also stopped messing around. Where was Kodak in these two matches? He wasn't out there. That's so weird. It's almost like they're better with Dogman out there, and everybody else was able to see it from the first minute.
Yep.
Where's Fred? Oh, Fred's not been out there. It's been Dako and Pakbo back at it again on the tank line. This is the best form of the Atlanta Reign. They're getting more comfortable in their own roster. They got over the loss of He Who Must Not Be Named, and now they are moving forward with Baby Bay. And it's working for them. They're clicking. They're still probably a middle of the pack team, but they're a team that has upward potential and upward momentum right now. And hopefully they can use that to carry them. I think it's good for them they're not in the playoffs right now, because now they're carrying this we can't be touched attitude, right? We can beat New York, we can beat anybody,
right?
And that's a mentality that's super, super valuable to have, and it's going to serve them well going forward. So I think it's great for them to not be in as weird as that sounds, to not be in the playoffs right now, because coming off these 2 wins, who would have thought you beat the New York Excelsior twice in the stage when you have to play them twice and you don't get into the playoffs like that?
Yeah.
Looking at it, you just pencil them in with 2 losses and go, well, I mean, it's probably too hard to get in, right?
Right.
And then they win those, but lost the other ones, which it's just kind of funny to think about and look at. with hindsight. But
Sports
again,
magic.
they were messing around with the roster early on. They were doing things they shouldn't have been doing, and dealing with internal conflicts. Punishing players potentially is something we've heard, and we don't know how true it is. But they're through that now. It's a big thing. People always talk about how you handle adversity in sports, and that's because so much of sports is a mental game. And right now, the Atlanta Reign have that mental game fixed and operating at peak efficiency for them right now. So that's obviously great for fans of the team, the roster itself, the staff, everybody involved with the Atlanta Reign. It's got to feel like a really great time to be backing that franchise right now. So ride it while you can. It's not going to last forever, but you guys earned what you've got going for you at the moment. It wasn't a fluke. Nobody can say that. They can't take this away from you. You've accomplished something you've accomplished something nobody's been able to do, and that's to go back to back against New York, a team that doesn't often lose back to back, period, let alone against the same team like that. So but I think specifically in this matchup, New York's gone the way of mono so far in these GOAT stages every single time. I've been very on the record saying that I think the tank battle decides these matchups more often than not. Even if it's not a matter of who's playing better amongst the tanks, it's like who's dying first amongst the tanks is a big deal. And I just think mono is able to be exploited a little bit. The team is known to put a lot of their resources into Jonak, and if you've got all these resources in Jonak, you've got Nene out there who can't be protected. You've got Mono out there who's not being protected as much as they need to, and those are actually the linchpin heroes. Like the flex support is not really the linchpin hero. It's very important, but there's still two other supports out there. You can win a fight if your flex support dies early, as long as you take a main tank or a Zarya out on your way. You're going to be in a pretty decent spot. So I think Atlanta just played well, did really good, but it's just not really been a major issue for them where they've needed to switch, make changes in the roster and things like that for a little while now. So we're seeing them pick up steam, really carry it over, and perform well in back-to-back weeks here. So.
Yeah, kudos to the Reign here for, like you said, really kind of putting NY giving them a reality check. Like we talked about before, their matches they've already played their match against San Francisco, so like that, for lack of a better word, Titan is out of the way already for their season, and they don't play against the actual Titans, the Vancouver Titans, until the actual last regular game of the season. So, looking at the schedule, it's like, who's even going to beat NY until that last game? Well, apparently the Atlanta Reign are right there, ready to put up a fight for sure. So, and I mean, it just goes to show, like we talked about, and this will transition us into the next topic, is like, maybe don't try to do exactly what they're looking to do to try to beat them. Even if your philosophy is that to be the best team, you got to be able to beat the best teams with the best maybe just try something else and get a crazy win. I mean, how good does Houston look if they just don't keep bashing their heads against the goat wall and actually get a couple wins out of these last few matches? I mean, it's huge.
Yeah, the difference between a 2-5 stage for Houston and the 0-7 stage would be a difference in the entire season to me, because now it's done. Pack it up. Like we talked about this with the Valiant. Your stage one wasn't good enough to push you through what the Valiant did. The Valiant just had your stage one right now, right? So like, I don't know. It's just a mess, and we might as well transition because there's not really too much to say on Atlanta versus
the only
NYXL.
other thing about Atlanta is that they get to end the stage on a high note. Like you said, they're not playing in the playoffs, which I agree is probably a benefit to them. They can really focus on the stage 3, which does include their home games this stage. So definitely on the upswing for them. But let's transition into this next.
Don't overanalyze don't overanalyze the Atlanta versus New York thing. Sometimes teams just match up well against other teams.
Yep. But let's continue. I titled this specifically for multiple reasons, but we're going to be beating a dead outlaw here.
Yeah. Yeah, 0-7 on the stage. They did seem to learn a little bit of their lesson later on as the stage went on. We saw, them have a pretty decent performance against Dallas, who's just a better team right now
Mm-hmm.
in this meta and really just roster construction, the way the way they're set up and clearly the way they're playing. They're a far superior team at the moment. But Houston played well. They gave Dallas a match in that game. They didn't really go out there and embarrass themselves, and that did carry over a little bit into Guangzhou. But I mean, Guangzhou's not Dallas, so putting
Mm-hmm.
up a fight isn't good. You have to get the win there. Dallas came out really, really sloppy. Did manage to force things into five, or Houston came out really sloppy, and they did manage to force things into five. But King of the Hill is just, it's gone from at the end of last stage, which was like the purest of pure goats metas, right? Like just
Mm-hmm.
to that was their mode. They were great at it. Now it's back to instantly their weakness, and just because they choose for it to be. They won't settle on a roster. They roll out 3 DPS players into the core, lose one
Mm-hmm.
team fight, switch to goats, and then are playing people in roles they're not ideal at for how long. It's just they're a mess right now. They're I think a solid roster in the sense that they are good enough and talented enough to be a middle pack team,
Mm-hmm.
and with a good meta to potentially excel, be a stage playoff team, be a good team. We saw them number 2 in the standings after a meta that was favorable for them last season.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not unreasonable to think they could be good again with this group of players, but they have no leadership whatsoever. They're coach, their GM, everybody is just so doubling down and so invested in this. But what I want to know is we saw massive changes in the coaching staff happen when one team went 0-7. Where's this team's massive change? I want to see
Right.
it. We've got a break. I'm not trying to hurry them, but what is Tyrone? What are we doing here? Right? The season's done. We're not making it to the play. Maybe sneak into 12, but 3-4 in stage 1 is, to me, good enough. You're now talking about needing a 5-2 stage, a 6-1 stage somewhere in there to really overwrite this, and then you can't even be below average, right? So now we've got to be back-to-back stage playoffs in order to really have a contention for the play-in, and that's probably not likely considering they can't get their stuff together and get anything squared away. So there's no reason to expect that to happen. You'd have to actually sit down and do the math, but honestly, they're 1 game better than the Washington Justice right now. They're 2 games better than Florida. 3-11 is really bad. You're probably just done. Your map differential is -23. How are you going to climb out of this hole? You're not.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look forward. Let's bring a coach in that can work with this team, try to make some improvements. There's no draft. There's no reason to stay bottom of the barrel.
Right.
There's no reward for doing that. So bring somebody in now that might get you some more wins now, help mollify and get your fans excited before the season ends. And then also have a strong opinion on these players and have worked with these players to know who among them they want to keep and who among them they want to replace going forward. That's the conversation now for Houston, regardless of what they might do later on, until we're looking at maps in the last couple of weeks of the season and we go, well, if they 2-0 these winnable, if they win 2 of these winnable matchups that they have here, they'll be locked into 12. That's the only way we're going to be having a playoff conversation for season playoffs with the Houston Outlaws.
And we'll probably only be having that for a very short time in this beginning of stage 3, unless they
that's what I mean is that you can't even have it then, right? Because it has to be at the end of the season, right? Going into week 5 of stage 4. That's the only way it's even worth having as a conversation, is if you can look at the remaining matches and go, okay, just win these 2, like do your job and you can be in the play-in. That's the only way it's going to be worth talking about. They're probably, in my mind, not the 3rd worst team in the league, but we'll have to wait and see what the meta does, because if the meta stays the way it is, they've proven they can't handle this one. Like, they're a very fluctuating team. They fluctuate a lot based on patches, and they're just a mess. But
I want to see Houston emulate what San Francisco did last season.
Would be great, wouldn't it?
Take what you know. I mean, even from the onset, the creation of the San Francisco Shock, they had a goal in mind. It was, we've got these 2 great prospects. We've got Sinatra. We've got Super. They're going to be our core. We're investing money into them. We're investing time in them. They're almost certainly getting scrim hours, I would imagine, even before they were playing, or at the very least, they're getting some sort of practice. So they're with the team, but they can't play yet. Figure out what you're going to do. The San Francisco Shock always had a plan. Now, there were some deviations. That doesn't mean that you have to stick to the plan no matter what, and that if things change, you're like, oh, well, I guess we're just, closing our eyes and moving forward. They adapted a little bit. They made some changes here and there. They got rid of Baby Bay. They, brought on new coaching staff, and they brought on a new coach with Krusty. They have Stryker. Even though they're not really using him, they've got a plan and they've stuck to it, and everything that they've done, at least it seems to be, is moving and working towards that plan. It's really culminated this stage. Even last stage too. This whole season has been they sacrificed in season 1 to be what they are now in season 2, which is an absolutely dominant team. The best team in Overwatch League right now by the stage is the San Francisco Shock. And it doesn't seem like Houston is doing anything that looks long-term. Maybe there's things that are going on behind the scenes that we just don't know. But last season, we saw San Francisco Shock. They were mediocre to less than mediocre. But as fans and as viewers and as people analyzing, we see, okay, we see what they're doing, right? Super and Sinatra come in at stage 3 or after stage 2, and they unlock a little bit. Now it takes some time to ramp up. Everything that they're doing is moving towards that. They end up kind of really unlocking and seeing their true success in this season. But even when they were bad, we can still see what they're doing, right? We still see that they're making steps towards that, and I just don't see that for Houston. Like, what is Houston? Houston needs to show something that's like, okay, you know what? This season, I agree with you, Dev. This season is done for them. Let's see a plan. Let's see something. Let's do something to get some results next season. And I know you have a really good opinion on this, but you certainly
they don't have a plan for lunch, Blevins. You want them to have a plan for the future. They don't know what they're ordering for lunch today. Okay, like literally, they need an identity. Start at the bottom of the standings, right? There's plenty of these teams that are like them and don't have an identity and don't know what they are. But the Paris Eternal do. They're not even a good team, but they have an identity. They know what they want to do. They're fine with goats. They play that better than they probably play most other things, so they're trying to use it. They have a plan with their roster. I don't like their plan, but they have a plan with it. The Chengdu Hunters clearly have an identity. That might be all they have, other than a legion of fans that don't like watching goats. The Shanghai Dragons have an identity. The Boston Uprising have an identity. The Toronto Defiant have an identity. The Atlanta Reign have an identity. And some of these teams' identities is, we're going to be wild card. We're going to be emotionally unstable. We're going to go crazy and just do what we want to do in the moment and play with firepower because that's what our roster says it's going to be. All those teams are above them in the standings right now. So don't tell me that it's to practice a niche strategy is a pretty good way to have a bad overall season. You're having one of the worst overall seasons humanly possible. So
you're
now
on track to be the worst team in Overwatch League.
even the best form of the Houston Outlaws argument has been completely shot to hell because they've plummeted to the bottom of the standings. They don't have any idea. They can't tell. Every example or everything I want to do has a swear in it, and we're on this show, so I can't say it. They can't tell their you-know-what from a hole in the ground right now, so they need to get that figured out. And until they do, nothing matters. And to be clear, we talk about having a plan for the future. The plan for the future doesn't have to be hit the reset button.
Right.
Okay. I'm not the only one that thinks they have a decent roster. There's holes in the roster. I think the support play needs to be bolstered. I think they need a strong shot caller to come in here and take over for Jake, because I don't think their DPS is across the board good enough for any one of them, except for Linkser, can stay on the stage 100% of the time. So your shot caller can't be Jake. That's an idea that's got to go out the window. He's not good enough across the board. Fine. I don't care if he's going to shot call. I think that's dumb. I think you should get yourself a main tank or a flex support, or a main support that can shot call, because those are the positions that are best suited to it. And I think you can up your flex support. I think they could revamp the entire support line. They could maybe try to consider getting themselves a main tank that is a little more flexible. But I don't know. I don't know that you need to give up on Cool Matt. He's performed well, at least statistically at times this season. But he's just not consistently on the stage to get any rhythm, to get comfortable, to get anything going.
Yep.
So he's really dropped off a bit. But even if they wanted to commit on Cool Matt and stay with that as their off tank, I think 2 support players could come in, make a world of difference for this team, as long as one of them's a strong shot caller. Is that enough to maybe catapult you into what San Francisco's doing? In my opinion, probably not, but at least gets you to where Hangzhou and Shanghai are right now, which is like bottom of the stage playoffs, squarely in consideration. And then we already know you're a patch dependent team, so just get the right patch in the playoffs, and then you're all set to go.
Yep.
Now you've got yourself an opportunity. You've got a chip in a chair. You're a puncher's chance. Every cliche in the book, instead of literal 0-7 garbage at the bottom of the standings, which is what you are when you execute your plan. So let's fire the people that are making plans, get somebody in that has a better one, and go from there.
Or at least a different one.
What needs to happen. Yeah, or at least a different one. Because to be honest, any plan is going to have potential, pitfalls and issues. But right now, we've seen what this leadership group can do, and it's not enough.
We're shooting for 1 win this stage. 1 win. Can we hire someone that'll get us 1 win this stage?
Or can we get a meta where there's DPS? Because then the win's going to come on accident, because Lynx are pops. That's what he does.
That's true.
The win will come on accident because he pops. But we can aim for 3 wins again. That would be great.
That would be great for you. But like I said, beating a dead outlaw here, because I feel like we've been talking about this for a while now. But if it keeps happening, we'll see. One thing I want to touch on briefly here was Toronto, of course. Hashtag absolutely not biased whatsoever. But Toronto, we've talked about, obviously, after their season 1, I think what many would consider overperformance with their stage playoff berth. Came into stage 2 not looking nearly as good. The meta kind of hit them hard, and they really kind of were middling to bottom of this stage, obviously. Came out actually pretty strong this last week. Obviously, big 4-0 win against Paris, and not a win versus Vancouver, but a map taken off and really not looking too terrible against them. I mean, what do you think about Toronto here, Death? Have the tides turned for them, or is it was it just a blip here?
Well, we're not back to where we were in stage 1, right? They're clearly still, IM37's not having the highest of impacts on this roster and on the performance. But you could see, I think, and you've been able to see it for the past few games. And we had a lot of people in Discord talking about how close the match with Paris was. I didn't see that. I thought we beat them up pretty good. To be perfectly honest with you, it wasn't a game where they were making a ton of mistakes and keeping Paris in it. What Toronto did do, which is maybe a little different than what they did in stage 1, was they played a very controlled game. I think they knew they were the best team on the stage at that time, and they played accordingly. And they played. It was something that used to happen all the time with the old, what was Soul's name? What did Soul? Lunatic High, right?
Yep.
Something Lunatic High used to do very well. They didn't wipe people off the face of the server, right? But they controlled the pace of the game.
Yep.
They knew what they needed to do to win the map in front of them, and that's what I thought Toronto did against the Paris Eternal. They were smart. They played the objective. They played the time bank. They used all the pieces to the puzzle to beat Paris soundly, and I thought that's what I saw. Was it perfect? No, Toronto's not a perfect team. They still have some issues, some things to work on. They still have some roster spots that are I think exploitable. But at the end of the day, a 4-0 win, and it wasn't, to me, a particularly close one. It wasn't a blowout, but I don't think Toronto was trying to hit that home run and demolish Paris. I think they were trying to win with as good of a map score as they possibly could, and put themselves in the best position to do that, and they were able to. They looked okay against Vancouver. Looking okay against Vancouver's an accomplishment. Before that, they did get beat by San Francisco, but again, I thought they played decent. but nobody took a map off San Francisco, so
Right.
I'm not going to hate on them too much. And then it was overall a rough stage. The other win before that was against Washington, but again, I thought the last 3 matches you were able to really see them improve steadily and get used to what they have here. Their coaching staff Bishop has always been a big selling point for us, and why we believe in this team as a team that has a chance to compete and to be a part of the potential season playoff conversation. Granted, we weren't saying that until stage started, but we said Bishop was why they had an outside shot at it. And why we didn't dismiss them as a bottom tier team. Yeah, Neko's an absurd human being. Some of his sleep darts are mind blowing, but and the coaches, I think, really got to work on this roster, got everything settled and figured out. I think there's the potential they make a roster move or two here coming up, and I think that gives them the potential to maybe get back to a team that's looking at 4-3 and 5-2 as a potential record in a stage, instead of 2-5 or 3-4 or something like that. So we'll keep our fingers crossed because we're rooting for them. There's still a lot of work to do in Toronto, but they're out of the absolute gutter here, right? Like they've done what Houston was unable to do and scraped together another win and got it together.
Win the matches that you're supposed to. We've talked about this for years. Win against your Paris Eternals. Beat your Florida Mayhems. Beat your Washington Justices. Win
your
those games.
Charges. Flame.
Right. Yeah. Beat your Guangzhou Charges. Win against those teams, and then, play your matchup against your mid tables, your Hangzhou Sparks, your Dallas Fuels, those types of teams. And then once you start getting there, all of a sudden, you start getting a puncher's chance at a San Francisco Shock type of team. I mean, I think we're very far from that, admittedly, but a decent performance against Vancouver. I mean, you can really focus in on some of these teams, but the long and short of it is they, unlike Houston, I'm never going to miss a chance to drag down Houston a little bit more. Unlike Houston, really finished out the stage on a high note and are going into the break with a nice little upward swing here. We're actually pretty good on time. So history again was made. Shanghai, the actual I'm talking about everything. History is always made every week because it was the first time in 2019 that a team played on May 3rd in 2019. Okay, I'm done. Shanghai and Hangzhou. Shanghai Dragons and Hangzhou Spark make their first stage playoffs. Hangzhou obviously came into the season kind of, I think, overhyped. They were almost like it was almost like the hype for Hangzhou is what Toronto lived up to in stage 1. And obviously Shanghai went from literal 0 to, I wouldn't say hero, but comparatively hero, with the never getting a win in or in season 1 to a stage 2 playoff berth here. What do you think about this, Death? What does this say about the league and Overwatch League?
I think it says the schedule really sucked this stage. Along with a couple other things. And not to take anything away from those teams, I'm going to kind of break it down. But how close were we to 4 undefeated teams at the end of a stage?
Pretty close.
I mean, other than the unexpected Atlanta taking down New York, and then Los Angeles had a questionable loss late. London lost early, and I don't think we ever had them penciled in as like an undefeated candidate, so I won't give them too much credit. But I mean, we were pretty darn close, I would say, to just not being wrong. Right, not being wrong about 2 matchups would have just made this 4 undefeated teams at 7-0, and it would have just been really awkward. I'm sure it's going to get better. I'm hoping they're seeing what I'm seeing and seeing that it's not great to make these teams play against each other back to back like this. It's better to spread it out and let them play against each other in different metas. And after things have changed a little bit, I think it would be more fun to go back and revisit New York versus Atlanta in stage 3. Now, it worked perfectly because New York lost twice, and that's all I really cared about. But
yeah.
But in reality, we saw it multiple times. The matches
got to be the home teams, right? I'll look into it.
But anyways, yeah, it's just I think the schedule should be kind of readjusted, or maybe the calculations that were used. Now, in a vacuum going into it, I would have thought it would have been great to see him go back to back like that, right? So I'm not faulting the schedule makers for it, but I think looking back on it now that we have hindsight, we can say whatever the recipe was for scheduling these matchups this week was not ideal, and I hope that we do get to re-examine that for next year. Obviously, next stage is that schedule is already written. We can't do anything about that, but. When we look specifically at these two teams, Hangzhou, what they did this stage, 0-4 to Vancouver, fine. They won 3-2 against Boston, which says you're adequate, but Boston, we talked about it last week, they're falling off a little bit. They're not that
They
upper
did
table
beat
team.
the LA Gladiators, though.
Sure, and they lost to Hangzhou. Though I don't remember who they lost to this week off the top of my head, even though it's in the notes and I could just go out. They lost to the Washington Justice this week. So,
woof.
Yeah,
Woof.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like they're not bad, but they're not. They're like the bottom middle pack team now instead of the upper middle pack team that they were before the trade. Right. In my opinion, I think that's what did it.
Sure.
But only time will tell exactly what the reason is for that. Let's see. They went 3-2 against Guangzhou, which says Boston says they're adequate, and they do that. When they beat Guangzhou 3-2, that to me says they're not.
Yeah.
Right? Like Guangzhou's squarely the bottom, not Florida and Washington.
They're D tier, not F tier.
Right. They're not F. Yeah, they're D tier. So you should be doing better than 3-2 against Guangzhou if you want to be considered a playoff team. They went 0-4 against San Francisco. Fine. I'm not going to fault them for that. And then 3-1 versus Chengdu, 3-2 against Paris. Those don't speak volumes to me. They're matches you should win, right? If you want to be a playoff team, so that's good. But where's and then they go 3-1 versus Seoul. That's the one to me that says they're above average. So we're looking at an average to a slightly above average team, I think, when we look at Hangzhou. But on the season, they still have just a -5 map differential. If you sorted the standings by map differential, they would be in 14th place. Just because the record worked out for them this time. Like, I think they had a favorable schedule. They didn't blow it, and here they are. Yeah. They lost some games they should have lost. They won some games they should have won. Some of them were closer than they should have been, but what have you. And there was like one or two that were up for grabs. The Boston match, I think, was early, so we didn't know. It looked like a sign when it happened, but it turned out maybe not to be. And then Shanghai was similar. They beat Florida, Houston, Chengdu, and Washington. Doesn't objectively make you a good team.
Right.
The losses were 1-3 versus the Gladiators, 3-0 versus, I wrote Shanghai, but that clearly can't be. I don't know. It's unknown. And then 4-0 versus the San Francisco Shock. Where are the close matches there? Where did you take one of those teams to 5 that you shouldn't have? That you shouldn't have really been in the. That's what you need to do to really convince me that you're more than an average team that didn't just beat up on the 4 easy teams that showed up on your schedule this stage. I will say they're making strides, but they're just a middle of the pack team right now. They reek of potential to me because if we get out of a GOATS meta, the DPS is the star of that team. So if they do, force a 2-2-2 roll lock, Jeff, please, Nate, please, anybody who can impact that decision, please, just let's do it. That might be exactly what they need to level up and kind of get out of this middle of the pack average spot that they're in. But for now, at least, hey, you can only play the schedule that you're given. It's not your fault that you won 4. There's no reason to blame them or think anything is wrong because they won 4 games here, or obviously. But yeah, it's just, again, a lot of this stuff, this stage to me is like, I'm trying not to overanalyze it because yes, I'm surprised Shanghai and Hangzhou are here, but when I look at how they got here, it makes complete sense. And maybe the fact that they're here is more about the failings of some other teams that I thought would be stronger and aren't. But even a lot of that, if you were to really break it down, I think would be schedule based.
Yeah, it's yeah, the schedule. I've heard the complaint about the schedule, and I never really looked at it. I looked into it much because it's not something we can really affect. But it does seem weird that, did any of these other matches even get played? Did any of these other teams even play each other in this stage besides San Francisco versus Shanghai, which literally just happened?
Well, I know the four that I talked about as we're almost undefeated. None of them played against each other
Yeah,
because
right.
I was aware and I thought we were going to be looking at four undefeated teams like 3 weeks ago. So
Right.
or 2 weeks ago or something like that. So it's the writing was on the wall, and that's a problem. And it's complete. It could always happen, right? Like you could have the best intentions. You could try to make it so top teams play against each other each stage and do your best, but teams are going to surprise you and just become
Right.
bad in a stage. And it's all so
Exactly.
it doesn't have to work out. But what I want to avoid is let's not at least often run the matchups back to back like they are when
Yeah.
you're inside the division. Spread it out over the metas. I think it's going to be more dynamic. It'll be more fun. We'll get to go back into it. You already have the stage playoffs kind of forcing these teams into exhibition matchups against each other that'll allow you to kind of measure in the same meta if it works out. But like if it doesn't work out and you're talking about a playoff team versus a non-playoff team, I don't care. Like and even though in this instance the time it worked out where Atlanta can't make the playoffs after beating New York twice, weird. But it's that would be interesting to see run back a third time, to be perfectly honest with you. But we're not even going to get that because when they play against each other twice, the result goes the same way. It's going to be very difficult to get both of those teams into the playoffs at the same time. It just so happens they took the very, very difficult route to make that not happen this time. But yeah, it's to me, I loved the idea of it. I was excited for it, but now I've seen it. Now I've experienced it. No thanks.
Yeah. See, I mean, it's tough to make that call too, because like it's entirely possible that NYXL just completely dumpsters Atlanta Reign, and it's just like seeing the same team get dumpstered twice. I mean, that kind of happened a little bit with NY versus Philly, which also happened twice this.
Well, and you even look last stage. Dallas played Shanghai twice, and the first one was close, and the second one was a 4-0 stomp. The matches aren't getting better the second time as near as often as they're getting way worse to me. And maybe that's just the ones I watch super closely or remember the most or something like that. The one exception was I do think Atlanta versus New York was more exciting the second time around because you're like, was it not a fluke? Can it happen again? But now you need the upset in order for it to be exciting. I don't know how often you can rely on that in a matchup where the caliber of teams is as separate as New York versus Atlanta.
Right. And I also don't think the schedule makers can be held responsible for whether or not that's a close match. It's just like, do you need to have those back-to-backs? I don't know the answer to that.
So how often does it make it more exciting versus how often does it make it less exciting? And so far, it's not the biggest sample size, but so far, it's leaning towards doesn't make them better.
Yeah. I'm just forced to assume that there's some logistical reason that they have to do it. And I'm assuming it's probably the home game weekends or has something to do with that. But I don't know. But enough about that. Let's talk here about San Francisco with the perfect stage. Perfect in all senses. They literally went 28-0 for maps.
Okay, but we had this conversation last year, and we defined a perfect stage as ending in a stage championship.
True.
So they have not had a perfect stage yet.
They had a perfect regular stage.
Perfect regular season stage.
Yes.
Flawless. Like peerless, can't be touched. And it's honestly, it's just super impressive. There's no real, it doesn't matter who your opponents are at this point when you're literally 4-0ing the entire field. But they were able to take down, let's go through their stage. They got the Valiant, they got the Charge, they got the Defiant, they got the Spark, and then they've got Philly and Shanghai to close things out. There's no world beaters here, right? So if they're a tier 1 team, the only tier 2 teams that they played against are Philly. That's it. Yeah, that's Philly. So they beat one tier 2 team, and that's even arguable in this meta with Sato being a nightmare. And that's, I don't even want to put them in the tier 2 conversation. Although I don't know that I really, if you really press me on it, I think I just want to leave tier 2 blank at the moment and just kind of, or maybe
I think it's like honestly, S tier versus B.
I think probably an unpopular opinion, and I can't wait for the tweets that I hate San Francisco. San Francisco probably is the entire second tier. Maybe like San Francisco and LA are tier 2, and then New York and Vancouver are still the top tier, the top 2 teams. It's not one bad matchup isn't going to change my mind. Now, New York comes out in regular season stage 3 and opens with, let's see, who do they play against? The Houston Outlaws. If they lose to the Houston Outlaws, bets are off. It's panic time, baby. We're hitting the panic button. Also, they're going to lose to the Houston Outlaws.
If they lose that,
it's karma. It's karma. You've been talking way too much, Blevins. You've been talking way too much.
I might just jump ship at that point. I don't know if I can be a fan of a team that loses to the Houston Outlaws.
Well, I can take not worry about that matchup even a little bit until we know what the meta is. Okay, if we have reason to think that Junkrat and Widowmaker are big players in the next meta, then maybe I'll get excited.
I'll take the Widowmaker matchup 1-on-1 as long as Spider Pine is.
Oh, you guys can play that fight. That's fine, but just. Unless I have some reason to think Houston can perform at the best of their ability, and honestly, there's no meta that makes me think they figure it out. Because I would have thought this one would have favored them because I thought there was opportunities to put Linkser on Widow and Paris and things like that they just refused to do.
Yep.
So there's New York's going to be fine, but if they do lose to Houston. That's when you'll panic and really worry about where they are and how do they get back to their old form and that sort of thing. Now it's just
they need a coachless and GM-less meta at this point for them to be good.
Honestly, the team would have been better off if the coaches had gotten out of the way and let the players figure out what to play.
Yeah, let the inmates run the asylum. Last thing here, a little bit of a smaller topic, but. We've been talking about Seoul for really their entirety as an Overwatch League team, having such an amazing roster on paper, at times performing up to that roster, and at many, many other times just shooting themselves in the foot. Like, how do you not? I still don't know how you don't play Fleta, especially when you're not winning. We've had probably more than one episode that's titled "Play Fleta, Get Beta." I remember, I know for a fact that's been an episode titled multiple times. What's going on with Seoul? Is there any chance for them, or do we just throw them out as the wacky wild card that we'll never be able to predict?
Listen, we don't have to throw them out. They're going to do it themselves. I kind of talked last stage about how I thought they were fundamentally broken as like an organization when they were tweeting about how content they were as soon as they beat New York, right? Like we're fine with this. This is farther than we thought we'd get. What kind of mentality is that for sports? Yeah. I'm sorry. You go out there and beat the perceived best team in the league and your attitude isn't, we're the best team in the league. We're taking the stage playoffs. You know, and granted, it's stage playoffs, so maybe that did bake into it a little bit. But publicly, you should never be talking about how we're satisfied. You've got a match tomorrow. Yeah. What are you doing? Like, get ready. Like, I don't even care if you're preparing because stage playoffs, they don't matter. But get ready. Like, show up. You've still got to like mentally be ready to compete, and they weren't, and they got completely destroyed by Vancouver, and it was to the surprise of nobody. But no, Seoul is to me almost as broken from a coaching standpoint as Houston is. They're just way more talented about it. Like they just have the ability on their roster to get away with it better because there's just a higher skill cap across the board on average, and maybe they're maybe stopping them from succeeding, but not forcing them to fail as much as Houston. So maybe not as broken. I think that's the right way to think about it. But look at what they're just inconsistent. They're the Philly of this season, right? Yeah. And it's because they're handcuffing themselves with their roster. We all know they're going to go back to Fissure and Fleta at some point. Why? Because they made constant stupid roster decisions last season and sub people in and sub people out and didn't know what they were doing. I hope they miss the entire stage playoffs again. I hope they are smack dab 13th place by the end of this season because Jae Hong's main tanking for no reason whatsoever again. Like they're just I think they're a fine esports organization, but now things aren't run like an esport anymore. They're run like a traditional sport, and I don't know that their coaching staff, their management have the mentality for it to really succeed in that environment. And until they find that mentality, until they're willing to just play like, oh yeah, we're getting inconsistent results from Fissure right now. Yeah, he's a drastically different style main tank than you're used to playing with. So why aren't you learning to play with him?
Right.
Why are you keeping yourself in a position where you're not figuring it out? it's only going to hurt you in the long run. They'll probably make the at least the play in, but I don't if they only make it into the play in, we won't see them in the official playoffs proper. They're not going to make it. They're going to psych themselves out and get knocked out. They're the classic one and done team. They'll probably make the playoffs. They almost certainly won't do anything with it. And I think that's all the mental game with them. I don't like just about any of the words that come out of their mouths when I can read their tweets. I hate it.
Yeah, it's again, let's look at San Francisco as the shining beacon of what you want to do as an Overwatch League team. Have a plan. You know what? You're seeing inconsistency with Fissure. Give Fissure the keys to the Cadillac and let him drive. And you know what?
It's working fine for Bumper.
Maybe he crashes it a few times. But guess what? You're crashing and losing anyway. You're just not letting Fissure drive. Let Fissure drive the caddy. Let him work out the kinks. You know what? Maybe some of the team members can't play with him. Find other ones, because you know what? Fissure is that talent. Fissure is, in my mind, the Sinatra super, like, we're investing in Fissure. You picked him up. Or, like, why would you pick him up? I mean, I've got those questions for other players in the league right now, too. But Fissure as well. Like, he works in this meta. You can run him in this meta. Let him.
And when you have the diva, when you have the Terrell Owens on the team, how do you keep him happy? You give him what he wants. You don't bench him for a stage because he plays a little too aggressive for the play style that you would ideally adapt. Why aren't coaches adapting their team's play style and strategy to fit what they have? The teams that are doing that are the ones that are succeeding in a big way. And the ones that are failing are the ones that are constantly trying to adapt and trying to figure it out. Do what you do better than everybody else and make people figure you out. And maybe it doesn't work, but it's the way it needs to work. And it's the way it will work in the best way, right? You're here to win. Everybody should be here to win championships, not sneak into the playoffs. Okay. Right. That's what bothers me the most about Houston. Not that they're losing. I don't care that they're losing near as much as I care that they're disqualifying themselves, that they don't have a plan, they're not showing me they're trying to figure something out. They're just lost.
They're getting nothing from the losses.
That's so much more frustrating than lose. I've been watching losing teams and rooting for losing teams my whole life. That doesn't shake me. But what shakes me is when Coach McDermott pulls my starting quarterback in the middle of a playoff run for no reason whatsoever. He throws 17 interceptions in the first half. That's exactly what Houston did this stage. They started Nathan Peterman. He threw 7 interceptions in the first half. The difference is Houston didn't even bench him. Like, at least the Bills took him out and didn't give him half 2 of the game. Yeah. Like, nope. All right. You're garbage. Get out of there.
Yeah.
We just keep throwing the garbage out there. And that's what I'm worried Seoul's going to do. They're never going to be as good as they could be, and it's their fault.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree as well. I think the coaching thing almost like it almost seems like the sports or like traditional coaching mentality, I think for a lot of them doesn't work in this scenario. If you're a coach and you're going in like, okay, we're gonna do things my way because that's the way we do it, and I know best because I'm the coach. That's just not true right now. Right? The coaches are no different than the players, except they weren't good enough to be players, so they're coaches.
I don't agree with that.
That's not necessarily true, but in some cases it is.
There's definitely teams where that's the case. Yes.
Right. So, in a lot of cases, or at least some cases, the players probably do know better than the coach right now, I would think. So, you don't let the players run the team. You don't let the players necessarily have the last say, but let the players like have input into the team and work with them.
When a new meta hits, sit down and as a coach, give them no directive for the first 2 scrims. Like, hey, I want you guys to go out there and try to figure it out on the fly as best you can. Don't worry about the results. Those don't matter. Play what feels right to you in the moment, and then we'll go from there, right? And if they have success, lean into it, build around it. If you fail, then adapt. Start making adjustments from there. Okay, this is what you guys felt best. Looking at it, I think this might work a little better. Let's try it. Let the coaches support the players and work around what the players want to do. And then you can refine it from there. And yes, if they go, we really want to play Widowmaker on this map. You try Widowmaker a bunch, it doesn't work. You go, sorry guys, Widowmaker's not going to cut it for us
Right.
here. Switch to it in the moment if our plan isn't working. If it's what you're comfortable with, you're always able to go back into that with a minute left on the clock if you've been failing for 3. But we need a better base plan than this. It doesn't fit our roster. It doesn't fit what we're doing. Here's why. That's I can't imagine what maybe it is what all of them are doing for all we know. I don't know, but it feels like the best way to go about it in this situation, because nobody's proven. No coach has the reputation. You don't get to hire Bill Belichick with his 5 Super Bowl rings, and you know what I mean. And he said it, so it's probably he's the smartest football coach that's ever existed. So we've just gotta do it. That doesn't exist here. So yeah, be a little more. Work with the team a little more, like you said. Let them set some direction, have some say in it. It'll help them buy into the plan. They'll feel ownership for it. Go look at Houston in the first 2 maps of their match against Guangzhou and tell me a single one of those players on the stage was buying into the plan.
Yep.
They all looked lost. They all looked like they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah. It just all goes back to, at the end of the day, win or lose. If you're winning, you're obviously getting something for that. You're progressing the stage. You're progressing the season. If you lose, it's got to be working towards something. It's got to be doing something.
A lesson must be learned.
A goal must be strived towards, and it doesn't seem like some of these teams are doing that. But let's not beat a dead outlaw anymore.
That was the soul topic.
Or a dead soul. Let's not.
But it was analogy. It was honestly, it's the best analogy I can come up with for what happened with Soul. They just had different results. Like they just had a couple wins thrown in there.
Right.
But they didn't want to, go backwards and not be a stage playoff team anymore. They wanted to keep that momentum going, and they failed.
Yep. For sure. But let's stop talking about it. And that was the first time I ever led into that drop with the correct phrasing that would make it actually make sense. The first time, 163 was the first time I ever did it. Let's talk about some good old fashioned. We got stage 2 playoffs happening. We've got on Thursday, we've got the 8 seed Shanghai Dragons versus the number 1 seed, the San Francisco Shock. We literally just saw this match last week. It ended in San Francisco, unsurprisingly, 4-0ing the Shanghai Dragons. Death, are we going to see anything different happen here?
Nope.
I agree wholeheartedly.
I don't have any analysis other than that.
No, we literally just saw the match.
Yeah. It's going to happen again.
Yeah. Pencil in San Francisco. Pencil in San Francisco here for the win. The second match on Thursday is going to be the Hangzhou Spark at the 7 seed versus the London Spitfire at the 2 seed. Death, who do you got?
London really stabilized, and they seem to just kind of understand what they're doing right now a little bit. I do really like them going into this stage playoffs. They're a team that's not going to blink in the moment or anything like that. Hangzhou might. It's really, really hard to pick Hangzhou here. I think they've got an outside shot at it, unlike Shanghai, who's just, you're done. That was good. Good job. You made it, though. But, London is, I've got them 3-1 here. Hangzhou could upset, but I don't see it. I don't think it's going to happen. London is too strong.
I don't think I'm picking the upset here, but, I mean, London won 2-1 versus Florida earlier this stage. They lost to Chengdu, which again, Chengdu's got a weird play style. Maybe they weren't ready for it. I can get that. I mean, it's still a loss is a loss to a mid to low table team here in Chengdu, but I'm not predicting the Hangzhou win here. Again, we talked about how their stage was not necessarily the cream of the crop here. So give me London here, taking out the Hangzhou Spark. On Friday, we've got NYXL at the lowest, I think, ever that they've had in a stage playoffs, 5 seed versus the LA Gladiators here at the 4 seed. Death, laid on me.
That's the Gladiators, right? Not the Atlanta Reign.
That is correct.
Then I'll be taking NYXL to win. I'll give it 3-0. I mean, listen, this is close, and I'll repeat what I say previously every time, like last stage playoffs. NYXL's done caring. Here's the difference. There's a month off, right? We don't know what the patch is going to be. We don't know if Rollock's going in. There's nothing for these teams to actually be. There's no PTR for them to be scrimming on that helps prepare them for stage 3 right now. So maybe they're taking some extra time off. They're using it as an extended break, but there's as little incentive as there's ever going to be to kind of just dismiss a stage playoff than there is right now. So I think we have a chance to see one of the better stage playoffs that we've seen. And to be honest, that's coming off of last stage, and San Francisco versus Vancouver was a phenomenal matchup. So yeah, listen, Gladiators are certainly in contention here. Everybody's a little bit shook on NYXL, but I said it at the time when we were talking about the match. Don't overanalyze this one. Sometimes matchups are bad. And until I have some reason to think this matchup is bad, I've got to think NYXL is gonna carry the win.
Yeah, I just don't see LA being the killer here of NY. It is definitely tough after the back-to-back losses to Atlanta, but I'm buying into your
the Gladiators. Oh, of course you are. You were invested in that one. But I guess the last point I want to make on this matchup is the Gladiators don't have the style that the Reign do. So I struggle to see them, their hyper aggression, being able to actually like take down mono consistently, like Atlanta was, to get those picks, whether it's mono or not. Whoever you're going to isolate, and maybe it's not any one person, maybe it's whoever's out of position or something like that. I don't know that the Gladiators play the style of game that's needed to beat NYXL. I think so far they've played more the NYXL style this stage, to be a little bit more reactive, and it's gone well for them, but I don't know that they can beat New York at their own.
Yeah, it's I'm certainly not predicting it. Last match on Friday is going to be the 6 seed Dallas Fuel versus the 3 seed Vancouver Titans.
Yeah, we got to stop giving map scores because it's not regular season format. It's
best
of
right.
fives.
Yeah, no need for a map score here. But Fuel's bad man for this for
brutal.
this matchup. Just
brutal.
Finally get it, and just immediately the hardest one.
Should have had the 7 seed. I don't know. You might have had a much better shot at it. 4-0 Vancouver. I talked about this when Dallas played them this stage, which I'm fairly certain they did. I'm not losing my mind, right? Double checking.
Maybe
it was week 3. Vancouver 4-0'd them. Dallas can't line up goats versus goats against this team. So in order to throw that Hail Mary, in order to play that other style, now they need to have standout DPS play, and that's the one thing I'm worried about with Dallas going forward the rest of the season.
Right.
Is, are they going to have the standout DPS play that it would take to succeed? That's not even... This is even harder than having the standout DPS play to succeed in a DPS meta. Now you need to have it to succeed in a GOATS meta where it's unfavored, and you know what I mean? Right. So I don't see them being able to do it. I don't think they're light years behind Vancouver in power level, but they would need to then beat Vancouver at exactly what Vancouver wants to be doing. Like, they don't have the tools to push Vancouver off their plan. That's what it's going to take to upset them, is to force them to change and do something different, and Dallas doesn't have it.
The only thing that I can see if I'm a Dallas fan here is Vancouver is likely not preparing super hard for Dallas. Dallas should be putting literally 100% of their preparation into Dallas. Do not look past this match if you're Dallas. Vancouver almost certainly is. So maybe that can line up, but...
What are they looking past it at, though? That's the question, because they don't know who their opponent's going to be.
They don't know who their opponent's going to be, but if they are doing this sort of mock... I mean, you can make assumptions or predictions here, but regardless, I mean, I think that the preparation is probably not going to be the same between the two teams. Maybe it is. But if I'm Dallas, you can really double down because a win against Vancouver, even in a stage playoff when it doesn't really matter, is going to be huge for the team's morale, for the fan base, for everything. Like, it means a lot for them. Vancouver, it's just a stepping stone towards another stage playoff, which is definitely useful, but I don't think it's at the same level as a win for Dallas would be. But if those we are in agreement for the first round of the playoffs here. So if we assume that our match predictions are correct, on Saturday we are going to be seeing the lowest remaining seed versus the highest remaining seed, which would be NYXL versus San Francisco Shock. Death, who do you have for this one?
I flip-flopped on you. I'm going San Francisco. I think they do have, and I want to just say this. I think in a regular season scenario, this would probably be pretty close to a coin flip in the current state. And I think San Francisco has the ability to play the aggressive style that I talked about. The Gladiators not having the ability to play, or at least not having shown me much of the ability to play it. I think San Francisco has been able to do that. They're an oppressive team right now. They're asserting dominance over people they play against. They're not doing that with passivity, right? They're doing that with aggression. Sinatra is not going to be a hang back, just kind of a player, right? That I don't think that's in his ability. So I think San Francisco would be. I would pick New York in a regular season scenario, but with New York probably at least being a little more relaxed or maybe a little less scrim time than normal. San Francisco probably wants that loss back from the finals last stage. There's more incentive for San Francisco to get there again and do something with it. So I'll say the heart of the cards is in the favor of the San Francisco Shock.
You know, I think everything you said is correct, but here's my one caveat. NYXL, notorious for choking in the playoffs, notorious for blowing it in the playoffs, for underperforming, for really losing to teams that they're quite frankly favored against.
Also, the Gladiators do win. You're going back and changing it?
What? No, what I'm saying, but here's what I'm saying. Even against the Gladiators and against the San Francisco Shock, they're not the favored team by their record, by their seed. They're not in a position where they've been untouched. They're not in a position to choke because they already choked. No one has any expectations of NY anymore. The expectations are gone. They can play loosey goosey. They don't need to live up to expectations. They can't choke. Well, they can choke, but they can't drop the ball because they don't have the ball right now. They're the underdogs here for the first time in I don't know how long. They're the underdogs. Don't give me that face. The seeding says they're the underdogs. You can't argue with numbers. Give me NY. They're going to win the upset victory versus San Francisco Shock. I'm calling it here. The second match of the night will be the Vancouver Titans versus the London Spitfire. Is London going to be able to beat the unbeatable in Vancouver? Nope. Okay. I also will not make that prediction either.
Listen, this is we talk about this like even with picking New York and things like that. Like it's just until it happens. What do I gain from going out there and predicting the London's going to get the win? Are they capable of it? Absolutely.
London has some sports magic in the playoffs. They're like the anti-NY.
They do. It's not going to be crazy. I will not fall out of my chair if Vancouver doesn't make it into the finals. But it's just probably going to happen, though, right?
I mean, I want to see London versus New York finals, a rematch of season 1, stage 1 playoffs.
We're so scared of the Titans and the Shock. It's not even funny. It's just a little sad.
I'm not scared at all. I mean, I'm not predicting.
You're only scared of the rain. The ghost of DeFran is more powerful than anything.
I mean, I'm not picking London to win. I just want to see it. Give me Vancouver, which means you have picked the I would say most likely outcome here of the rematch, the San Francisco Shock versus the Vancouver Titans. If your predictions are correct, It is San Francisco. It is the rematch. Who do you have?
Momentum is really going to be favoring San Francisco at that point. But man, I would lean slightly towards the Titans. I mean, like I just got through saying, like until it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, you can start to say that about San Francisco soon, but Vancouver's just got a longer track record of it, and it'll be, in my mind, it'll be very close to a coin flip. But how do you? I mean, literally undefeated.
Yeah.
Including the stage playoffs the first time around, like just literally haven't lost in this stage
since
yet,
even before they were an Overwatch League team as well.
Yeah, but that literally doesn't count.
Yeah, it doesn't. But it's
I hate anytime somebody when the
broadcast
broadcast brings it up, I'm like, stop.
It doesn't count and it doesn't matter whatsoever. But it is literally brought up every single time that it's talked about. So I'm going to continue that time-honored tradition. Here's one thing that I'll say to go all the way back. If San Francisco if San Francisco loses a map to Shanghai, I'm picking the NY win, not even close. Now, if San Francisco wins, it's best of 5, right? 3-0 versus Shanghai. And then they win 3-0 versus New York. I'm buying the actual 100% out of 100% win of the season. They're gonna 4-0 the Vancouver Titans and complete the actual 100% pristine, perfect, untouched season or stage rather.
That's cute.
I want to see it happen. I would love to see it happen. I only want to see San Francisco win if they don't lose a single map the whole stage. If they lose even one anywhere, I'm rooting against them again.
Entertain me briefly here on an alternate timeline.
Okay.
The Shanghai Dragons defeat the San Francisco Shock in the first game of the playoffs.
Okay.
Can New York possibly make it to the finals anymore?
So that means that New York would be playing against...
I don't even care. They're just not the underdogs. Like your whole argument was that they can't choke if they're the underdogs, right?
Well, they
like
would only not be the underdogs if they're playing against Shanghai.
What would have to happen? So then it would be,
when would that
London
be possible?
versus Shanghai, and then it would be NYXL versus Vancouver, right? In our bracket, if you flip that one.
So no is the answer to your question.
So you can't go. You can't go. You couldn't possibly.
I think it would. Man, I want to see NY versus Vancouver, but it's almost like that's almost.
I can't believe I just talked myself into really rooting for Shanghai for no reason, just because I would love to see that matchup in particular prior to the final. Like I want to see it in goats. I just want to see it. I just want to know if Vancouver's actually able to bully them around.
I mean, give me Vancouver versus New York at any point in this playoffs, and I'm going to be happy. I want to see that.
Yes.
I hope that it's not as grisly as it very well could be, but I hope it's close.
Could be grisly either direction. We don't know.
It's true. This will be grisly. Yeah. So those are our predictions. It's either my prediction is going to be New York versus Vancouver in the finals, which was our promised finals of last stage that San Francisco had to go ahead and ruin. It wasn't ruined. It was probably the best finals we've ever seen. And you've got San Francisco versus Vancouver in the finals on your bracket. So let us know what you think about those ones. I don't know. Actually, no. Man, I don't even know who I pick. I got to go with NY. If NY makes it to the finals, I'm picking them to take it home, but it's really tough. It's really tough to go again but pick against Vancouver at all. But let us know what you guys think. Who do you guys have in the finals? Who are you rooting for? Who do you think is going to win, etc., etc.? That is going to take us to the end of this wild and wacky episode. Death, any last minute stuff you want to talk about before we get going?
No, I'm still dead inside.
Is it because you've been beaten to a pulp nonstop by your own team?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure maybe we'll see some changes in the offseason. We do get that long offseason, so I'm hoping for some nice spicy changes across the whole of the league. But we will definitely talk about that as they happen. But for this week, we are done. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Make sure you check out everything that we do over at highnoonpodcast.com. You can also head over to twitch.tv/highnoonpodcast and watch us on Mondays at 7 Eastern-ish, where we record live. We record this show and as well as foul play on most weeks on Mondays. Tuesdays, generally going to be around the payload. If you do want to check out Blackwatch Report, they have their own Twitch channel as well. You can also check us out at patreon.com/High Noon Podcast if you are looking to support us in that way. But that is going to be it, everybody. Thank you for listening. For Deathblow, I am the Blevins. And, guys, remember, it's high noon. Okay, I don't know if it's actually possible because I'm not going to do the math, but give me a Dallas versus Shanghai stage final so that they actually have to play each other a third time, even though they've already played each other twice. That's what I want. That's what I want.